downtown Los Angeles. People head here to work, shop, and eat. There's plenty of food to be had, including this bad boy. Meet the bacon-wrapped hot dog. Top it with anything you like, and you've got yourself one of LA's proudest gastronomical traditions.
It tastes so good, and it's so bad for you, you might think it's illegal. Actually, it is.
Welcome to the underground world of black market bacon dogs. Okay, it's not really underground. You see food carts like this all over the place, and there's bigger ones too. Some vendors will sell you an illegal bacon dog, but hardly any will talk about it.
She doesn't want to talk.
The owner of this cart wouldn't talk, but she responded to our questions through one of her customers, Fabiella.
2 weeks ago, somebody spoke to the news, somebody in the news, and that's why they were harassed. And they're trying to get rid of them.
And who's trying to get rid of them?
The health department.
The vendor tells Fabiella that the health department has been cracking down on bacon dog sellers.
They've been arrested. The food is basically thrown in the trash can. Everything they have, they throw it in the trash.
We saw it ourselves. The cops confiscated these carts. The dogs were dumped. And then the carts tossed into the garbage truck. Now, why in the world would officials want to mess with something that's so delicious? It all starts with the salty strip that wraps around the hot dog.
Doing bacon is illegal.
Elizabeth Palacios is one of the few vendors willing to speak publicly.
I used to do that before, but health department doesn't allow that.
She's been selling bacon dogs and other food for about 20 years. She pays taxes and is required to have 3 different kinds of permits.
City permits, health department permits, and border equalization permit.
She's used the money she's made to raise her daughter, buy a car, and a house.
No, I love to sell. This is my life. I like to be with customers, to talk to them. I feel proud of myself.
But with run-ins with the health department and police officers, Palacios worries about the future. She says she loses business if she doesn't give customers the bacon they demand.
They want bacon. They want to buy it with bacon.
It just gives it like an oomph, just extra taste, the crispiness of the bacon, and just the flavors together. It's just wonderful.
Bacon is a potential hazardous food.
Terrence Powell of the LA County Health Department.
Potentially hazardous foods, by definition, are those foods that, if not kept within certain limits, whether it be temperature or pH control, acidity, would allow for the growth of harmful bacteria that would get you sick.
So how many people are getting sick from these bacon dogs?
That's kind of a nebulous number.
We don't know how many cases of food sickness come from eating out versus eating at home, so no one really knows if these dogs are dangerous. But Powell says customers expect food to be safe.
That they're not going to be locked up in the restroom at home because they ate a hot dog that was improperly cooked or improperly stored.
Well said, Terrence. Our cameraman Alex bravely agreed to an experiment that would test the bacon dog's effect on the human body. Actually, Alex was wolfing down dogs long before we aimed the cameras at him, but we'll still give him credit for advancing science. We'll check on Alex later. Gee, I hope he's okay. But Powell says that Palacios can sidestep this controversy and sell bacon dogs legally. How? Get rid of her old cart and buy a sleek new one like this that comes with new features like a 3-compartment sink.
So that you can wash, rinse, and sanitize any of the equipment that's being used, utensils and the like.
The new car cost is like $26,000. How I can afford it?
The new cart is about 5 times as expensive as the cart Palacios has now. But if she sells bacon dogs without it, she faces the inevitable stiff consequences.
It's $1,000 or 6 months in jail. And we will summarily take individuals to court if they violate the law.
They took Palacios to court about a year ago after catching her cooking bacon dogs.
I have to pay a lawyer.
The judge sentenced her to 45 days in jail.
It was a black day for me.
Meanwhile, Alex is still downing dogs with no ill effects, and we didn't find anyone who has gotten sick from bacon dogs.
I never got sick.
I never gotten sick, and I think the people that sells hot dogs really helping us.
But we are in the business of preventing people from getting sick, and we will do that.
Of course, it is possible that the bacon hot dogs might have made some people sick. But in addition to what might have happened, maybe, shouldn't we also consider what we know for sure is happening to people like Elizabeth Palacios?
So all that money get me behind my bills. And right now I'm broke. I'm still broke, almost 1 year.
1 year after getting busted, she's still deep in debt from paying attorney's fees and fines, and because she was unable to work for 45 days.
It is like really, really amazing that over 12 months I've been late on my mortgage.
Now she worries that she'll lose her house and points to the vendors with the tiny carts.
They do a lot of more money than I do.
She says if she doesn't sell bacon dogs, customers will buy from them. And you don't have to be Ben Bernanke to know that she's right.
And they said, "You have bacon?" And I said, "No." They said, "Oh, thank you." And they call with whoever has bacon.
She loses money, and the goal of protecting consumers doesn't turn out the way officials wanted. Shock. Because unlike Elizabeth, these vendors aren't licensed at all.
They don't care about if you're cleaner, if you don't have license, if you don't have a license to handle the food. They just want the bacon.
That's right, Elizabeth. They just want the bacon. For Reason.tv, I'm Drew Carey. You know, when you go to the doctor's office, just for something as simple as a checkup, you have to sign in and then you have to wait a while. 20, 30 minutes, more. You read a magazine, you listen to your iPod, anything to kill the time, and it's usually a pretty long wait. But there's a lot of people that wait a lot longer than you and I do for a checkup, and it's for something much, much more important.
You feel sort of hollow and, is anyone going to come along?
Sally Sattel knows what it's like to wait for new life in the form of a kidney transplant. She thought she'd found a donor several times, but one after another fell through. One was a close friend.
I thought she was going to do it. She thought she was going to do it, but oddly, she was actually talked out of it by a friend of hers who was a transplant surgeon.
The waiting continued until a rather unexpected someone came forward.
I think I'd only seen her maybe 5 or 7 times in person.
We weren't really close.
If she ran into a mutual friend.
I said, "So how's Sally?" And she went, "Well, she's all right," which is obviously she's not all right. And I go, "Oh my goodness, what's up?"
And within 3 days, she wrote me an email that in the subject line said, "Serious offer."
I said, "I hear that you need a kidney, and if I'm compatible, I'd be willing to be a donor for you."
In 2006, Virginia Postrel gave Sally her right kidney.
And now she's my heroine.
Unfortunately, happy endings like this are pretty rare.
I've died 3 times actually, but they kicked me out of heaven. They didn't want me there. My grandpa sent me back one time. My cousin sent me back the other time. The other time my dad gave me CPR because I had a seizure right there on the floor.
Like 75,000 other Americans, Christina De Leon doesn't have a living donor.
I don't dwell on it. I'm like, well, if it happens, it happens. Just do what I can while I'm here.
Like so many others, she's on a waiting list to get a kidney from a dead person.
I've been on the list since 2003, so how long is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 years almost. The emotional effect of me waiting, really, I just get tired, sometimes just get tired, but then what can you do about it?
What can we do about it? Since becoming a donor, Postrel has thought a lot about how to increase the supply of kidneys.
There are really a lot of misconceptions about what is involved in kidney donation. The biggest one, and one that seems very commonsensical, is that you have 2 kidneys for a reason.
Postrel is an author and former editor of Reason magazine.
You live just as well with 1 kidney as with 2.
And the transplant procedure is safer than you might think.
We've never had a kidney donor death at our program here.
Dr. Gabriel Danovich is medical director of the Kidney and Pancreas Transplant Program at UCLA.
It's approximately the same as the death rate after having an appendectomy.
But each year, about 3,000 Americans die while on the waiting list.
Every year, every day, the list gets larger.
Every day, someone like you waits for an organ donation while life passes by.
We passed laws. We urge people to become donors. The DMV asks us to become organ donors when we get driver's licenses.
Will you help? Will you help?
So much has been tried, but the supply of kidneys still isn't adequate.
I don't know whether it will ever be adequate to keep up with the number of people, because there are so many people in this country with diabetes and high blood pressure and all the other things that set people up to develop advanced kidney disease.
We've got to find a better way. Otherwise, patients face death or dialysis.
It's dialysis time. Come on, get up.
On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I get up to go to dialysis, 4:30. I snooze till 4:45, and sometimes I get up on time.
Oh, God.
Each session is about 4 hours long. The dialysis machine cleans Christina's blood, doing the job a healthy kidney would do. Without dialysis, patients would die. With it, they deteriorate slowly. Nearly half won't live 8 years. Christina dreams of traveling.
Exactly. You can't just go.
But the 3-day-a-week ritual makes it very hard.
You have to call a dialysis center, make sure they have room for you. Some places don't take people who travel. They call them transients.
It's also tough to work full-time.
I can't work at a doctor's office because they want someone 8 to 5. They want someone in the mornings. So I can't do that because I have to go to dialysis.
With a new kidney, Christina wouldn't have to be tethered to a dialysis machine.
You know, so much has been tried to help people like Christina, but there's one thing we can't try because it's illegal. Stay with me. Paying people to donate their kidneys. I know, it sounds really ghoulish, it sounds really icky, but they're your kidneys, and it really helps people in need, so if you want to sell one, why not?
The most straightforward approach would be simply to repeal the federal law that makes it a crime to sell organs.
But Danovich says that would be a dreadful mistake.
They don't care about each other.
He says money would take the caring out of the donor-recipient relationship.
We're going to take the caring out of it, and it's become a matter of paying off people.
But Pastrell points out that donors are the only ones in the transplant process who aren't compensated.
The surgeons are paid, the people who supply the medicines are paid, the people who clean the floors in the hospitals are paid, everybody's paid, but not the donors.
But would people be less likely to help others if money were involved?
Voluntary donors actually feel good about themselves. Paid donation actually is a subversive process that actually undermines voluntary donation.
If you think of, soldiers or firefighters.
We respect their service, we appreciate their heroism, but we also pay them for their work.
Many worry that the poor would be exploited.
Who is it that are going to be donors? They're likely to be people whose life has gone poorly and they are in trouble.
What if donors use the money to buy a house or pay off debt? Should that concern us?
I don't know whether they're paying off a debt for, child support.
What's wrong with that? Why should we say that poor people aren't allowed to take advantage of being able to be kidney donors?
The 2002 movie Dirty Pretty Things depicts a black market organ selling ring in London, where the rich simply buy kidneys from the desperately poor. In this scene, an immigrant nearly dies after he exchanges his kidney for British citizenship.
He swapped his insides for a passport.
Some people sidestep the waiting list in real life by becoming transplant tourists.
People who've gone abroad to buy kidneys, there is, by the way, a high incidence of infectious complications.
The problem is not that people are getting paid, it's that they're getting defrauded and they're not getting adequate medical care. And this is a huge problem.
Lee Cressetta has admitted that he was part of a scheme to steal body parts from corpses.
Making something illegal isn't exactly the same as stopping it from happening.
More than 1,000 stolen body parts were sold to hospitals for transplants and other procedures.
Today, the average wait for a kidney is 5 years, but that's expected to nearly double as soon as the year 2010. So, is there a country where selling kidneys is legal? Well, yes.
Iran has a system of paid kidney donation, but we don't have a lot of good data. But evidence suggests that many of those donors are very dissatisfied.
Yes, well, we usually don't associate Iran with compassionate health care.
They don't feel good about themselves. Their lives have not really been improved. The money they got did not really solve their problems.
A new study finds problems with the Iranian system, but the author, himself a kidney specialist, also discovered that payment succeeds in a very important way. Iran is the only nation in the world with no waiting list for kidneys.
This is one reason that I would want it to happen in the U.S.
Pastrell says the U.S. could help people like Christina by combining the payment incentive with our high standards for health care.
If you look at the way people are screened to be transplant donors, you would have much better results here.
If I was rich, I'd pay somebody in a heartbeat. But that's not my situation.
But Pastrell says insurance companies or maybe even the government would pick up the bill. After all, the government already pays for dialysis.
This is an enormous expense. The federal government could pay $90,000 to $100,000 per kidney and still save the taxpayers money.
Besides saving a life, you could get paid. If that's the way you have to go to get people off the list because people are not donating, then by all means, pay them, please.
What would it be like to have a transplant?
God, it would be heaven. But I would be able to sleep later than 4 o'clock, you know. I'd be able to eat what I want and drink what I want and travel. You know, I want to go to Indianapolis to visit one of my best friends. And I mean, it's just, I'd be able to, I guess it would just be freedom. It would just be freedom.
So what do you think? It's not such a horror movie thing after all, is it? How can we end the wait for people like Christina and help give them the freedom that they deserve? For Reason.tv, I'm Drew Carey. Thanks for watching.
With all that artistry and attitude, it's no wonder that design shows are so much fun.
I'm just going record, I hate it. I'm just so upset right now.
But what if these people are actually putting your life and even the president's life at risk?
We can't figure out how we're actually hurting the consumer.
Natasha Lima Yantz has been an interior designer for more than 20 years.
I think certain people have a gift, and Natasha has that gift.
Angie Stoker hired Yantz to design her home.
My home is fabulous. She brought so much warmth to it.
Yantz started her own business and is president of the Designer Society of America. She has an extensive portfolio and magazine features. What she doesn't have is a state license.
I'm not sure if we did ask her if she was licensed.
Should Yantz have been forced to go through an extensive licensing process?
I felt compelled to sponsor the Alabama Interior Design Consumer Protection Act. The act ensures the health, safety, and welfare of the consumer in the state of Alabama.
Under the Alabama law, moving a throw pillow could get you hard time. Practice interior design without a license, and you could spend up to a year in jail.
The public has a right to know when they hire an interior designer that they are hiring a qualified professional.
Why the stiff penalties? It's to protect consumers, says ASID, the American Society of Interior Designers, an industry group that lobbies for licensing laws.
Interior design is more than meets the eye.
This ASID video suggests that licensed interior designers are uniquely qualified to undertake important jobs like designing kid-friendly library rooms.
The children's area employs brighter colors and smaller scale furnishings so that children are naturally attracted to the space.
Apparently, only government-certified interior designers know that kids like kid-sized furniture. Just imagine what an unlicensed designer might have done. But the bigger issue is safety. This list, 10 Ways Interior Designers Save Lives, was compiled by another group that pushes for licensing laws. Did you know that painting prison cells pink saves lives? Because the color temporarily neutralizes anger and aggression. Notice you never see any pink during prison riots. The same group implies that confusing floor patterns and other items installed by unlicensed designers cause 11,000 deaths each year.
Every decision an interior designer makes affects the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Really? Does every decision affect health and safety? Well, yeah. Just look at what happens when an unlicensed person like me attempts interior design. Yantz's Alabama counterparts no longer have to worry about being jailed because that law was recently declared unconstitutional. But 22 states and the District of Columbia regulate interior designers. In Yantz's state of Florida, designers must get licenses or face stiff restrictions on what they can do. For instance, unlicensed designers may work on homes, but not businesses. Speech is also restricted. Simply calling yourself an interior designer can get you into trouble.
That was the catalyst for this entire mess.
The catalyst was an ad in Lincoln Road magazine. The magazine published the ad for free in exchange for work Yantz agreed to do later. Yantz says she did not create the ad or write the copy. All that was done by the magazine's staff. She didn't even see the ad until the issue was published.
They ran the ad and they put that I was an award-winning interior designer.
Florida's Board of Architecture and Interior Design saw the ad and launched a legal case against Jantz.
I said, oh, she's a bad girl. She's calling herself an interior designer.
That led to one count against Jantz. Offering crown molding and related services got her another count.
Anybody can walk into Home Depot, anybody, and can buy crown molding. And if they're smart enough, they can install it themselves.
All in all, she faced 5 counts, $25,000 in fines, and the possibility she feared most, the end of the career she loves.
I received a cease and desist letter to stop designing. I couldn't breathe. I was crying so much.
Why not just get a license? Well, she'd have to graduate from a government-approved college, complete an apprenticeship program, and pass a long government-approved test. The whole process could cost her 6 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I was chosen by America to be the host of my own series.
So many of America's favorite designers are unlicensed. Are they putting lives at risk?
Good morning. It's Oprah and Nate. Oh my gosh!
Maybe the president put his own life at risk when he chose the White House interior designer.
He can choose absolutely anybody he wants, but he's going based on talent and dedication, and he's chosen Michael Smith.
Michael Smith may be talented and dedicated, but he's also unlicensed. Secret Service agents will jump between the president and a bullet. So why don't they jump between Obama and his interior designer?
If it's good enough for the White House, I think it should be good enough for the rest of us.
But what about all those maimed and mangled bodies? I wanted to ask ASID to name some victims of unlicensed interior design, but no one there was available for an interview.
Free to design! Free to design!
I did, however, find an answer in the Lone Star State.
A group of unlicensed designers saying there's a bill in the legislature that would make their jobs illegal.
Whether it happens this session or not, it will happen. We will be licensed.
Marilyn Roberts helped draw up the plans for this legislation. She says it's to protect the public safety, to ensure public places are designed by people who know safety code.
Are there any examples in Texas where there has been some sort of a safety problem because somebody that wasn't a licensed designer designed?
Actually, there are not things that I can document right now. There have been all sorts of situations where people slip on the floor in a public building.
Well, even if people aren't getting slaughtered by unlicensed interior designers, what about quality of work? How are consumers supposed to know who's good without the politician's stamp of approval?
Sometimes that piece of paper, I'm not sure how important it is. As long as they have the tenacity, they have the experience. Natasha had the experience that I saw in the portfolio. I liked what she did. She has a great vision. And then the end result is something that my husband and I are thrilled with.
Is Angie Stoker's experience typical? Well, it turns out that states with strict licensing regulations have more customer complaints than states with no regulation. So if licensing laws don't help consumers, why do groups like ASID keep pushing for them?
I hate to say this, but the only thing I can come to is profit, to get rid of competition.
You make more money if you have less competition. And this Institute for Justice study finds that licensing laws are especially likely to exclude minorities and older workers from careers in interior design.
Jantz recently relocated to rural Georgia for her husband's cattle ranching job. She had hoped to travel back and forth to nearby Florida to practice her passion. And although regulators reduced her fine substantially, she's too afraid of prosecution to go back.
It's just made me rethink everything, because I always thought that the government protected you.
She can't afford the time and money it would take to get a license in Florida, and designing in Georgia would mean starting all over in an area with more cows than potential customers. Plus, Georgia regulates interior design. So if Jantz does start a new business in the Peach State, a new band of politicians might put her through the same old hassles. For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
I see subsidies as part of that big equation of the government overspending in areas where they need to cut back. You know, the government's bailing out the banks, but my question is, who's going to bail out the government?
In response to the current economic crisis, our government has decided that taxpayers should bail out failing businesses. This is nothing new. During the Great Depression, the federal government started a subsidy program to get farmers through the hard times. Those programs are still in place today, even though farmers earn 30% more than the national average, and total farm income has more than doubled since 2002. Ken Galloway is a cotton farmer in Olton, Texas.
We've always been small farmers. When my father retired, then I took over, and I've been farming since '96. This is one of my cotton fields. I love farming. It's what I love to do.
But Ken isn't your typical farmer.
I'm unique in that I'm one of the few farmers that'll talk out against subsidies. The problem is these subsidies make the farmer reliant on the government, and to that extent they're bad.
Al Montna grows rice near Sacramento and serves as the president of the California State Board of Food and Agriculture.
To be in any one of the major commodity crops, the subsidy system has really become a major part of your income. We see them as an investment, and more see them as an investment in our national security.
In recent years, farm subsidies have become increasingly unpopular. Groups like Oxfam on the left and the Heritage Foundation on the right are critical of farm subsidies, as is Dan Sumner, an economist at the University of California at Davis.
The only decent reason to have these subsidy programs is because we've always had them. There's no other reason you can think of. Back in the old Soviet Union, you had people growing all kinds of stuff that nobody wanted. Well, we have the same thing here. We have a bunch of rice that costs 65 cents a pound to produce, and the market isn't willing to pay anywhere near that. That's simple waste. That's taking real resources that we have as an economy and throwing them away.
Many people who support farm subsidies are concerned about the plight of small family farmers.
We celebrate the family farm not only because it gives us the food we eat, but it also maintains a way of life.
When Franklin Delano Roosevelt introduced farm subsidies in the 1930s, 25% of the population lived on farms. Today, less than 1% of Americans live on farms that are larger, more efficient, and more productive than ever before.
We've evolved to this highly capital-intensive industry.
If you're small, you either get bigger or you quit farming because you can't make money.
Since 1985, Willie Nelson and his friends at Farm Aid have raised more than $33 million to help save the small family farm. But despite what you may have heard, the vast majority of the $20 billion or so that our government doles out in subsidies each year ends up in the pockets of the richest farmers in America.
They were never designed to be subsidies to help poor people.
Most farmers, including those who grow our fruits and vegetables, don't receive any subsidies at all, while the lion's share goes to huge agribusiness firms like Archer Daniels Midland and Cargill. And get this, the long list of farm subsidy recipients includes billionaires like David Rockefeller, Fortune 500 companies, and lots of people who live in Manhattan. To get a sense of how ridiculous farm subsidies are, let's take a look at the sugar program.
What we do here in the United States is keep out sugar from the rest of the world. The market price of sugar is about 10 cents a pound, average price around the world. Cost of production is in the 20 cent a pound range or a little higher here in the United States. We could buy it from places that are good at producing sugar, say Brazil, for 10 cents. We pay 20 cents. That's a waste.
So we're paying twice the world price for sugar while the sugar industry gets rich. Why don't we get rid of these tariffs?
The cane farms are very large, and so each farm has millions and millions and millions of dollars riding on keeping these tariffs in place.
In fact, the sugar industry donates around $3 million to Democratic and Republican members of Congress each year. And the cotton program is no better.
Cotton farms in the United States, almost all of them that grow upland cotton get subsidies. The total cost of the taxpayer tends to run around $2 or $3 billion a year. It's about half the total revenue for the industry.
Like all farm subsidies, the cotton program is a form of corporate welfare. But U.S. taxpayers aren't the only ones who pay the price.
If you have a strong subsidy, as they did in the past in cotton, then that encourages, when prices are low, people to overproduce, which simply holds the prices down, keeps them down low. That, of course, impacts foreign countries and poor countries like Mali and West Africa considerably. I went to Mali about 2 years ago. We went to raise awareness of the plight of farmers in third world countries like Mali. Of course, the poverty level there is very extreme.
The farms are very small there, so that the effect on the family's income may be $100, $200 a year from the depressed prices they get caused by the U.S. cotton program. But that $100 or $200 a year is enough to feed a child. It's enough to send kids to school. It's enough to buy the medicine for the family for several years.
The U.S. government's refusal to scale back its farm subsidies has led to accusations of hypocrisy and highly contentious World Trade Organization talks.
Fortunately, in this latest round, WTO round, it more or less fell apart.
The WTO talks fell apart because developing countries demanded an end to the protectionist policies of rich Western nations.
We will not be a party to any consensus that does not recognize our right to grow and to trade and to survive in this world economy.
U.S. farmers like Almana are sympathetic because they have to compete against heavily subsidized farmers in other countries.
Our competitors are subsidized. Europe to the highest levels and Japan to the highest levels.
If you can believe it, a cow in Europe receives a subsidy of around $2 per day, which is twice the income of a typical cotton farmer in Mali.
U.S. agriculturalists would much rather compete in a free trade environment. And if we were to open those doors, as promised by many administrations, both Democratic and Republican, we would achieve that goal. And the need for a safety net under U.S. agriculture would be greatly diminished.
So why doesn't our government do the right thing? Set a good example and end farm subsidies once and for all.
Most of the members of Congress pay almost no attention to these programs. And in the districts where there are cotton farmers, each of those individual cotton farmers are getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the program. They really care. They make sure their member of Congress knows that. The other reason they're able to keep them in place is that the detail of the actual legislation is mind-numbingly complicated and frankly boring.
Complicated, boring, and really bad public policy, especially in these troubled economic times. For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.